Greetings and Happy New Year. Happy 2024. Can you believe it? It's 2024, right? Year of the Dragon, by the way. Awesome year. So, year I was born. Other than that, awesome. Other than that. Uh, so, Happy New Year. If you're seeing this video, it is the first day of January or possibly after of 2024. Wow, trying to get used to that. I know we say that every year, right? Every new year comes and we're like, oh my God, I can't believe it's that number. Anyway, so I thought I would do a video since it's the first day of the new year, of the Year of the Dragon, to kind of just kind of an update video on Savage Kingdom's role-playing game, just some stuff I'm kind of doing on the side that are or related to, and just yeah, hopefully somewhat quick video. Um, so yeah, let's start with number one. So I'm going to continue to run these role-playing game camps for younger players, for youth players, ages 10 to 16. That's generally the age group I run these RPG summer camps for. And winter camp, we just had a winter camp about just a few days ago. Actually closed out, and that was very successful. So they pretty much always sell out when I do these things. Now, granted, the cap is only like 16 people in the space that we use. I am thinking about possibly looking at a bigger space to do some of these camps. So look forward to that. I don't know if this relates to too many of you watching this. I know some of my youth players do watch some of my videos from occasion and probably make fun of them, I'm sure. So anyway, this might apply to them. So if you are watching this and you are one of my players or parents, then yeah, I want to continue through 2024. I know I'm getting older, but we all are, and I'm still very interested in this as a game designer and as an actor and just as a director of not only productions but directing these little camps and stuff like that. So been a lot of fun. I still will continue running these game sessions on the weekend for players. I run Dungeons and Dragons 5e for the most part. Those of you who know me know that's not really my favorite game, but that's kind of what most people want, especially the younger people getting into the hobby. So I do continue to run it, and it's fine. I have a good time when I'm doing it. Sometimes I'm always wishing I was running a more interesting system, or one that's not completely over the top and at high levels kind of broken and all that stuff. All the stuff I think most of us that have been in the hobby for a long time have known. But it's still a lot of fun. It's still a pretty good game system overall. It's fairly easy. The things that aren't easy are a little weird and wonky, as we know. But they've just kind of remained as a staple through the 50 years of Dungeons and Dragons at this point. So wow, crazy. And yeah, so RPG camps. Yeah, so I usually do 3 in the summer. When I first started doing it, I only did like 1 or 2 sessions, but like I said, they would always sell out, so we added like 3 of them. And then I do like a winter camp one, and then we do the weekend games, like I said. And then the last couple of years, I've done a spring break camp as well. So that'll be coming up, I would assume, towards the end of March, early April, something like that. So number two, the thing I like to kind of talk about for the new year and stuff like that. So my acting stuff, I won't dwell on this much. I don't think a lot of people that are my actor community really kind of follows me on YouTube. So I'll just make this kind of brief. But those of you who might be interested, so I will continue to work as a professional or semi-professional actor and director. My next gig coming up is with my wife. So this is probably our 13th, 14th production together. We don't always get cast together, but when we do, it's kind of awesome because that way we can just ride rehearsals back and forth into performances. This show, however, will be putting us up a few nights in a nice hotel, or like an okay hotel, I guess. So because it is a little bit of a drive, it is still in Western North Carolina where we live in the mountains here, but it's way like almost to the Georgia border, where Georgia kind of connects, or almost to South, in that area where South Carolina and Georgia almost connects to Western North Carolina. So their production's putting us up for a while there, and so we'll be rehearsing that for just about a week and a half. We did some preliminary rehearsals back in November. The script has changed a little bit, but not much. Just a couple of rehearsals under a belt to kind of get the familiar. I don't know what that was. Hold on just a second. Oh, that's my spouse in the refrigerator. So I thought it was a cat. Especially one of the new cats. We have a new cat that's been coming around on the porch and making itself known. And so, oh, there goes Karen. And so we've been feeding it and trying to figure out. We've put out all these messages on social media trying to figure out whose cat it is. It might just be a cat that just people let it out on occasion and it just comes and visits. That's kind of almost what I'm leaning towards. I hope somebody didn't just like throw the cat out. It's a very pretty cat. It's very well taken care of, and that's why I think it's like it's being coddled somewhere. I think, well, at least part time. Anyway, neither here nor there. Where was I? Oh yeah, acting stuff. So yeah, we'll be doing this. This show's called Fantasia on Mysterium. It's a brand new. It's a original by a local artist and pianist. A very creative and clever man, Michael Yannetti. And I said Yannetti for some reason. Michael Yannetti. So who we worked with on a production a few months ago called The American Woodsman at the Dinah Wortham Performing Arts Center in downtown Asheville. So we'll be doing that. Really cool. It's got like it's going to use a lot of high tech stuff with a lot of digital screens and all this kind of cool stuff. And we've been hired or cast hired to portray several couple of characters that come in and out of his life. It's basically a biographical story, but also based on the Russian composer Scriabin and how his life parallels Scriabin. And yeah, very cool. I think there's only 4 or 5 performances, and I think several have already sold out. So it's in a massive theater called the Bardo Center at Western Carolina University, out there in extreme Western Carolina. Like I said, near the borders of those other states there. Um, so it's a good hour from us, actually, hour and 15 minutes from us. So gonna be fun, yeah, right? So cool. The next thing after that would be a murder mystery dinner theater. I'm gonna say it twice. Theater show. Back with the company that Karen and I have both done some stuff in the past, run by Jimmy Ferreira, uh, of some former Broadway notoriety. But he likes to direct and produce these murder mystery shows around Western North Carolina and also in Chicago. So he kind of goes back and forth. I think he has some connections to Florida, somewhere in Florida as well, but mostly Chicago and here in Asheville slash Hendersonville slash Western North Carolina. So that'll be fun. So I'll probably be playing some more Italian guys, whatever. I'm always like casting some gangsta, even though I have no Italian in me whatsoever. But you know, life of an actor, you portray whatever you're cast as, um, and try to do the best job at it. So that'll be fun. That's in February, right? And then from there, I don't have anything planned as far as acting go, right? But you know, that's fine. That's just you know, I still like a couple of productions come back through February. I'm sure something will come up. Um, but you know, I'm not like super focusing as much on that this year. Famous last words. I've said that before, and then suddenly I get offerings for all this stuff, and I'm like, cool, I'll do it. But so yeah, I'm going to focus. What I'm mostly going to focus on this year is point number 3, which is Savage Kingdom's 10th edition. So as you know, I've been going back and forth between Savage Kingdoms X, which is kind of what I'm calling Savage Kingdoms the next edition for 2024. I've gone over this before in past videos, but in case you didn't watch those, it stands for Savage Kingdoms 10, Roman numeral 10, right? X 10, it's clever, right? Not so much. So it means Savage Kingdom's 10th anniversary, because 2024, the year that we're now currently in when I'm doing this, is the 10th anniversary of Savage Kingdoms, right? So this will be a 4th edition in 10 years, which I know is possibly a bit much, and that's why I was almost not going to do it. So yeah, SKX or SK10, 10th anniversary. But I think the Year of the Dragon is appropriate. I'll be a certain age number. Um, that's very obscure. We all will be some sort of number, I'm sure. I just felt like it was appropriate with Dungeons and Dragons kind of failing a little bit, or Wizards of the Coast slash Hasbro failing it, I should say, is more appropriate. A lot of these indie games like mine and even like bigger indie games that are almost like small corporation games are trying to kind of weave into that niche. And not only as crows and ravens to the slaughter, but also because the new people have gotten into Dungeons and Dragons. I think a lot of them have finally figured out that there's a lot more stuff out there, right? There's like literally thousands, tens of thousands RPGs that have been published, and some that probably never been published that are sitting on people's computers or notebooks or something like that. Um, so yeah, my point is there's a lot of different game systems and settings and different genres to try out. Medieval fantasy is still by far my favorite. So I will say that about Dungeons and Dragons. I mean, Savage Kingdoms is medieval fantasy, although to be completely technical, it is set more in Dark Ages, so it would be Dark Ages fantasy, uh, leaning towards sword and sorcery. So it used to be build a sword sorcery. So those of you who are true fans of that genre know what those subgenres mean. Everybody else just looks at it like that's swords and dragons and stuff. And that's not necessarily untrue, but they're different. The different subgenres have different themes, different sort of elements that are make it a little different from sort of generic fantasy or high fantasy, something like that. So yeah, probably 90% chance, 80% chance that I'll be publishing that this year, but I will probably need to kickstart it almost certainly because I just don't really have the funds. So my little company, my little publication company called Fire in the Head Productions is just very middle school. It's basically me, occasionally some other people contribute. They're rarely if ever paid, unless they have an adventure. Like there's a couple of people have written for me. I have adventurers on my Drive Through RPG publisher site. So technically they could make a little money through it. I'm not sure. I think I've only maybe paid one person something. It's very small royalties because the sales are not. They don't get tons of sales, and then even then you get like a pretty small percentage. I think the point of having something written and up there is really just to kind of get some experience of writing adventures, writing rule sets, writing campaigns, gazetteers, lore, that kind of stuff, um, and maybe to have your name, so you can use on your resume for what it's worth. So yeah, stuff like that. So mostly it's just me, Firehead Productions. So Firehead Productions is produces Savage Kingdoms, and for the last 10 years, that's also known as an imprint in the publishing field. That's your imprint, your logo on the book, um, and the sort of the publishing company behind it. Whether it's just one person or 250 people, it doesn't really matter. Most people don't care, right? They buy the product. They don't really care what the publishing company is for the most part, and you just delve into the book and I feel like it. So I've also been producing theater through Fire and Head Productions. I just started to I'm like, why not just use this cool logo that's already been designed for it by Mike Maurer like years ago because I really like it. And why not just make it more of an umbrella production company? And even though theater and gaming aren't necessarily connected, they are loosely connected by the fact that they're both creative, kind of right brainish endeavors. Um, Gaming is not performing arts, but it kind of borders like that on nowadays. I've always treated it as such, honestly, a long time, way before Critical Role ever did, by the way. But so they are kind of loosely related, I suppose. But yeah, there you go. Anyway, enough about the Fire in the Head Productions, such that it is, except for that it might be producing SKX this year. Probably have to kickstart it. If I do kickstart it, it'll be in May, probably around my birthday. I just like sometimes tie that together. I think it's kind of fun. And I will admit I can kind of use it like, hey, if you guys want to give me a birthday present, you can send some little bit of money over towards the Kickstarter or whatever. I know it's super cheesy, but it usually kind of works for the most part. So if not, it'll be later in the year, maybe around September, around what I call Dragon Con time, like the end of summer, early autumn, because I will probably go back again this year to promote SK and probably maybe Red Sun as well. So speaking of Red Sun, I know that I've had videos saying that I finally decided that I'm going to do SKX over Red Sun. Um, like I said, I'm 89% sure what I said is correct. There's still a part of me, I will fully admit, full disclosure, that it's almost a little too early for another fourth edition. I know I've spoken about this before on a very small independent game. You actually really have to produce almost a new edition about every 3 years or so because core rulebooks are your main seller in a game line. And if your game is already small, every time you produce a new product within that game line, it just gets it's almost minuscule. At that point, whatever you're publishing is costing you as much, if not more, than what you're making back. Well, actually, almost always more than what you're making back. It becomes a passion at that point, right? A creative passion, which is fine. It still is, but I also have to pay rent and mortgage and eat and uh, stuff and survive is preferred really than not surviving. So yeah, there's that. So yeah, so Red Sun is not completely off the table. Again, Red Sun is a pure sword and sorcery role-playing game. I say pure because it's more what would be deemed sword and sorcery. Savage Kingdom started off kind of as sword and sorcery, and now it's not really quite there. It's kind of almost between. Like I say, it's really technically Dark Ages fantasy. I know that's not really a subgenre, but I would say it's a cross. It's a if sword and sorcery. Robert E. Howard, sword and sorcery had a child with Tolkien's Middle Earth. It would be somewhere in between, probably leaning slightly towards sword and sorcery. So it's yeah, kind of its own thing in some very minor, minuscule way, at least in my head canon. So Red Sun is more pure, sword and sorcery pure in the sense of more set in an ancient world. In fact, it takes place 2,500 to 3,000 years before Savage Kingdoms. It's the same world, same setting. I just decided just to keep it in the same world, and that gives me excuse to develop the prehistory of the Savage Kingdoms world even more so. It's already kind of there. It's already in my head. Some of it's also published, and some of my notes that haven't been published. But there's still tons of time I could develop. Right. So plenty of prologue time, I guess, is what I'm saying in the current SK sort of canon campaign time, which is around 727 of the Lorenthian calendar. Is kind of the default current setting of Savage Kingdoms. But if you have the book and you're a game master out there, you can certainly set it whenever you want. The Red Sun will go back to 2,500. I said at one point it was 2,500 years, and I changed my mind to 3,000. I'm trying to make the reason I'm not quite sure is I'm trying to make the established lore work, and there's a few little things. Most of it does, like 85% of it, but there's a few little things I have to kind of tweak, and that's totally fine. I'll probably just leave it up to the mistake of scholars and lore masters in game. I like doing this anyway. I've said it in past videos to make your lore. Don't always make it like particularly correct. In fact, you don't even necessarily need to know what every little aspect is. Leave it completely open. That way, you can, if a player character comes up with a really cool idea that they base this character off this old belief that this thing that you didn't think was part of your lore is true, you could use that and now make it like kind of the official, or make it one of the other possibilities that lore is true. So what I'm saying, just like in the real life there, and just like in the real world, there's conflicting historical accounts of things. Now there are some things that are pretty obviously well known that everyone agrees upon, but there are a lot of historical accounts that you get the account of the victor, and also, well, as the story goes, the victors write history, right? But there are occasions where the losers, or people that are kind of in the minority of history, depending on what region of the world you're in, their voices were still heard. Like there were some recordings of it, or maybe some oral stories passed down with some credibility that might have a counterpoint, or maybe have like a slight adjustment to historical uh, fact. So I'm just saying that in your fantasy settings, and in this case, Red Sun or Savage Kingdoms, for my case, uh, you can make the lore kind of ambiguous, and so don't always your history and your uh, stuff doesn't always have to be correct. Now, when it comes to like geography, and the players literally go to the mountain range that supposedly was always eternally on fire, then you need to have it on fire or not when they get there, right? So that has to be kind of an established thing. But as far as like lore goes and stories, yeah, you don't always have to set it down on stage, on the page. So I've even said like in Savage Kingdoms, and therefore in Red Sun, perhaps even more so, that the gods necessarily aren't real, or maybe not all of them are real, or maybe they are greater demons or angels posing as deities, or just some force out there in the universe that's occasionally hears a prayer or pays attention to a sacrifice, grants a gift, a favor every so often. But I think so. When the gods aren't real, and this is like a side tangent, I apologize, but since we're talking about Red Sun and Savage Kingdoms, I'll go ahead and finish the thought. It's the belief in the gods, right? That's real. Just like the belief in magic often can make it something almost happen, or at least you believe that happens. So it's the power of the faith of the deities that drives spell casting, and the powers of priests, or clerics, if you want to use a D&D term. Um, Whereas whether the deity really exists or not, I think that's the least important of that. Besides, it's more fun to kind of make it ambiguous, and where you're not sure the deity exists. Um, Maybe occasionally an omen is sent to the character, and I love doing this in games where I have a raven perched nearby and staring at one of the priest of Andorok in my setting, and they look at it as a sign from Andorok, and maybe it is, but it could totally just be a raven sitting there, just happen to be staring at the priest when he walks by. But that's kind of fun, having omens that may or may not be omens, or at least the more devout priest and believers will think that it's an omen, whether it is or not, right? All right, so enough of that. So that the reason I went into that little minor tirade, a little bonus material now, if you will, is because I went into Savage Kingdoms and Red Sun and kind of a general description of sword and sorcery settings. So, before I finish the video out, I wanted to go into a couple more rules things that I've developed for Savage Kingdoms. Um, I think I spoke on this before about ranges. So I've been going back and forth. I've been doing a lot of fairly hard design now that I've had a couple days downtime. You can probably hear it in my voice too. I'm getting over a cold. I'm almost there. I'm like 95% fine. So is my wife, and so I've it's given me a couple extra days at home to type away and do stuff and look over scripts and write and work on Savage Kingdom slash Red Sun, and yeah, and develop more stuff. So I've been actually able to get it a little harder. I'm in there tinkering more now with the rules and stuff. Whereas before I was kind of like, what if I'm just going to I'm just going to redo this new talent and maybe there's a little tweak here and there's just spell from the previous editions with a minor tweak here and there. But now I'm getting more into hard coding. So I think I mentioned this before. Ranges are going to be in categories now. So you have close, short, medium, long, and extreme range. I think that's 5 ranges. Um, so a weapon will be, for example, let's use a longbow. That's a pretty good example that has extreme range. So extreme range is left ambiguous. Extreme range is anywhere from, no, I forgot what it is. We'll say 100. I think it's more than that, 150 yards, or because it's a longbow in history, easily will go that far. Anything from about 150 yards out to 250, 300, again, it doesn't matter, is considered extreme range, right? So firing an arrow from a longbow from close range, from like point zero, the archer's point zero, all the way out to extreme range, is a -6 penalty. The reason why is the -2 penalty per range category that you cover. So nice and simple. I've started doing that with some of the other things in the system. I spoke before that Savage Kingdoms is very much a -2, -5, or +2, +5 system. In some ways, it still is. But I'm now realizing that having it a +2, +4, +6 system, or minus those numbers, those steps, it almost makes more sense. And I can't get into all the details right now. There's certain things in the game that I'm discovering as I'm tinkering that break down really well using that. Well, I still have +2s, +5s here and there, of course, but so yeah. So this example will be such as that. So if you're shooting a longbow at, say, a target within 1 range out from you, right? So short range, this is only a -2 penalty. Or wait, actually no, this is no penalty. It's no penalty from close and short range. So if you were shooting a target at medium range, it's -2. But shooting a target at long range is -4, and extreme range is -6. So the biggest penalty is -6 for extreme range. There is a talent called it used to be called extended range. I think I'm still calling it that. Right now, I may be calling it range specialist. I don't know. I'm not sold on either one of those titles. That allows you to subtract 2 from. So in other words, you suffer the penalties, 2 less penalties, right? So if you're so if you're shooting the said longbow to extreme range, it would be a -4 penalty with this talent. And so that represents archers that have really, literally just trained for long field archery. And so I think that's not only realistic, but also really cool as far as game design goes. Maybe. All right. So what's some other things I've come up with recently? That's stuff right there. It's been fun. Oh yeah. So exceptional quality weapons used to have a maximum damage increase of +2. Now it's +5. The whole 2 kind of, I just couldn't wrap my brain around it. I hate that. I wanted maximum damages of weapons to all be 5s and 10s, right? To be on increments of 5. So I just went ahead and I'm like, heck with it. So just make it exceptional quality weapons, +5 to maximum damage, which is really nice. But I think they needed a little bit of a boost anyway. other than being a little bit harder to break or whatever. However, so it used to be there was a weapon characteristic called prestige. If you had a prestige weapon of exceptional quality or better, you get +1 to renown. So now I've moved that to master crafted. So I think it kind of balances out. It's also probably a little more fitting, I think. So if you have a nice master crafted weapon, that might boost your renown. So as it stands right now, I still do have the prestige trait for weapons. I might get rid of it because renown has been scaled down a little bit in the system, but I still kind of really like it. So I don't know. So right now it's there. It's staying there. Yeah. So exceptional quality weapons. So to break it down really quick, so a poor quality weapon, without looking at my notes, see if I can remember what I've written. Poor quality weapons are -2 to the attack roll, to your melee weaponry or range weaponry roll, depending on the weapon type. Uh, -5 maximum damage, I think. Yeah, and -1 armor piercing. Feels a little harsh, but it is poor quality weapon. Actually, that's probably about right. Um, Weird thing is, at -5 maximum damage, a poor quality dagger can only do up to 5 points of damage, which is the same as a punch or kick. So I don't know about that. Anyway, as it currently stands, -1 armor piercing totally makes sense. Well, basically what that means, -1 to armor piercing, not AP -1. So in other words, if it's a poor quality great axe, which normally has an armor piercing of 3, it would be armor piercing 2 for a poor quality one, right? Right, because it's not as the edge would be kind of crappy, and maybe there's a cracked and a haft or something. So average quality weapons are just average, right? So all the stats are literally as written in the book. They account for about 80% of weapons that you would find in the world, 85% maybe. Exceptional quality weapons, like I just mentioned, are +5 to maximum damage. So to use that dagger example, that would be 15 instead of 10. To use the great axe example, it would be 30 instead of 25. Right. So to where was I? Oh, yeah, mastercrafted. So mastercrafted weapon is now +1 armor piercing and +5 maximum damage. So maximum damage did not increase from exceptional. So mastercrafted made armor piercing go up by 1. Even if it's a weapon that doesn't normally have armor piercing, like a dagger, it would be 1 because it's like super sharp, well made, harder to break, right, and also have the prestige quality. So I think that's pretty cool. I think that works out. The next step is heroic quality, and those are still weapons that are, I don't know, heroic in quality. So better than mastercrafted. So generally they mean a really well-made weapon that was used by a hero over time, or was imbued with some extra quality to make them semi-enchanted, or even like enchanted. So they are +1 to your attack roll, +2 armor piercing. I'm trying to remember. +10 maximum damage. I think so. I think I'm on the right track. Without looking at my notes because they're on the computer that I'm currently using. I don't want to pull them up and mess up the whole thing. And they usually have 1 minor enchantment. So whether that is to burst into flame for 1 minute per day or whatever. The last category is legendary quality. A legendary quality is, if I can remember, +2 to attack roll, plus I think it's still +2 armor piercing, +15 maximum damage, maybe. I think that's right. And then has 2 enchantments, 2 magical abilities. Uh, Whether it is to shoot lightning out or grant a warding spell for 10 minutes on its wielder, or perhaps even whisper messages into the wielder's ears or something like that. Uh, that's legendary quality. And so those account for probably about 1 in 10,000 weapons in the world, whereas heroic quality probably counts for 1 in 5,000 to 10,000. And mastercrafted is probably, they're more like about 5% of weapons you would find, so 1 in 20 or so. Right. Those categories exist for armor as well, just like in previous Savage Kingdoms, as well in range weapons, and also really everything, really any kind of item, particularly tools. Musical instruments can get a boost to performance checks if you or skill rolls if you're using an exceptional quality one or a master crafted, except stuff like that. So Well, that's all for now. I wanted to keep it under 30, so I'm going to have to wrap this up really quick because it's 29:48. So thanks for listening in. I just wanted to check in. Happy New Year, everybody. Happy Year of the Dragon, and I'll talk to you guys again soon.